My name is Megan Wagner, and I'm 13 years old. I like to play with my dog and cook. I like to bake. My sister and I kind of compete because she thinks she's better than me, but she's not.
She was the easiest child. She could make friends with a tree, was kind of our saying, because she was so charismatic and didn't really care what others thought about her. The kids loved to be outdoors. We did biking, hiking, all the things that you get to enjoy in the Minnesota summer. We had a mini triathlon in our neighborhood, and after that she said her knee was sore. So we thought, she probably just overexerted herself. A couple weeks later, school started, and she had mentioned a couple times that her knee was still sore, and so we brought her in and had an x-ray, thinking maybe she had pulled a tendon or had a slight fracture or something that we just didn't know, and nothing was seen on the x-ray. We did an MRI, and we got a call not even 4 hours later that she needed to be seen at the University of Minnesota as soon as possible, and I should be expecting a call from them. At that moment, I quickly looked on the internet to see, Dr. Ogilvy, what does he specialize in? And I was quite alarmed when it said, I couldn't read it, to be honest, how to pronounce osteosarcoma, but behind in parentheses it said bone cancer.
Osteosarcoma is a cancer of the bone. It's proven really challenging to treat. We found that only a handful of chemotherapy drugs have been successful, and we also know that osteosarcoma is relatively radiation resistant, which makes it really hard to come up with targeted treatments for osteosarcoma.
She said, "Mom, what is osteosarcoma? What does that mean?" And the fear of her hearing those words truly takes your breath away. I just said, it's something we don't want, but it's something we're gonna fight. I didn't really know what else to say because I wanted to curl up in a ball, and yet I knew I couldn't, that I had to try to be strong. And then I went in the hall and my sisters met me, and they held my hair as I vomited.
The current treatments for a lot of these cancers, especially osteosarcoma, really hasn't changed that much in the last 20 years, and it involves surgery and chemotherapy. And a lot of these regimens, the chemotherapeutic regimens, are toxic in and of themselves. I mean, they make the patient feel very ill. Complications can arise down the road. Even secondary cancers can arise from some of these therapies.
In that 9 months of treatment, 101 nights in the hospital, I was super naive and I had no idea how just intense the drugs were. One of the times when Megan was having a nosebleed and also vomiting, I was in the bed with her, trying to console her and comfort her, and the nurse asked me to step out of the bed because the bile or the blood could actually burn my skin if I didn't have gown or gloves on. And I was flabbergasted, and I said, "You gotta be kidding me. Like, this is my daughter. If it's gonna burn me, what's it doing to her?" We were just hoping she would make it through nights. Like, we were just hoping she'd survive.
So I lost my hair, and I sometimes lost my sense, like my taste. Mouth sores, you get mouth sores pretty badly. You would get nosebleeds from the chemotherapy, and they would go on and on and on. They wouldn't stop. It was, no kid should have to experience that.
Every other medication that we've studied, every other treatment modality has been unsuccessful in treating osteosarcoma. We know these treatments are really harsh, and we desperately need better treatments, both to improve our outcomes, but also to spare these kids of these terrible side effects. One of the most devastating side effects is what Megan experienced, and that's heart failure.
probably the second worst day of our life. I remember them saying odds of her making it through the night are pretty slim. The LVAD she had for over 2.5 years, and she wore a backpack. She had a line that came out the side of her body that was connected, and it swirled through, and it had like a plug, almost like a wine cork that was in her heart that gave the power and ran her heart. There's not many kids that have had to do a reoccurrence and be on an LVAD. Megan's one of the only ones that we know of that has survived to tell that story. The reason she was in heart failure was from the toxicity of the chemotherapy.
I see it every day. I see these kids suffer for years from multiple recurrences, many of them dying of their disease. These kids muster up so much strength and perseverance, and they deserve better. They deserve better.
Support from Children's Cancer Research Fund is very important in multiple ways. You have to bridge the divide between the lab bench and the clinic, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face. Sometimes described as the valley of death for some of these therapies, because you're trying to bootstrap funding from different pieces together to try to make it across the valley. To support that work would allow the focus to be maintained on the actual process and pushing the process forward quickly and efficiently. That's where Children's Cancer Research Fund comes in being able to provide funding to jumpstart these kind of bold new ideas.
To make a brighter future for these kids, we have to be bold. We have to be creative and really look outside the box, and what can we do to make an impact so that these kids have a much better chance at having normal lives.
They deserve everything. They deserve our fight. They deserve us not stopping until we can make progress and decrease suffering. What Megan had to go through, one can never imagine. These kids are fighters, and they deserve our fight too.
I can confidently say the bolder we are now, the brighter the future will be. These patients are asked to dig deeper as they go through these therapies, which are very, very difficult. And so I think we as researchers and everyone at DREAM who's supporting the research, should look to them and tell themselves that, if they can do it, we can dig deeper too, and we can push a little bit harder to get to where we want to be, which is a cure for these kids without all the suffering that they have to endure.
We have a story and a narrative that most people don't want to hear. And through the grace of God and our medical team, Megan's been given a second and third, probably fourth chance to be a kid. Look at any child you know and know that that could be the next one. So if you can give generously, now's the time, because we can make a really big impact.
For research, you gotta have money. For money, you have to have people willing to give you money. And people just need to give from their hearts.